The market square was full of noise, colors, and strange smells. Merchants shouted from their stalls, selling glowing fruit, strange weapons, and fabrics that shimmered like water. Aliens of all shapes and sizes moved about, laughing, arguing, and trading, and in the middle of all that chaos walked a human traveler, his steps steady, his eyes sharp. But it was not the human that caught everyone's attention. It was the small figure walking beside him. She was barely taller than his waist, her thin body wrapped in worn armor that looked too heavy for her frame. A short blade hung at her side, and her dark eyes glared at the world with defiance. Whispers started the moment they entered. "Is that his protector?" One alien muttered with a smirk. "She's no warrior. She's a toy." Another sneered. And then the laughter followed, echoing across the market. It was not friendly laughter, it was sharp, keen, cruel. The human ignored it at first, but the little warrior's fists clenched tightly, her knuckles turned white, her steps quickened. Still, she did not speak, she did not break. She walked with her chin high, as if every insult was nothing but air. The mockery grew louder. "Look, a human carrying his pet soldier," someone shouted. "She fall if the wind blows," another added. The aliens around them laughed. Harder, it was as if the whole market was against her, but she kept walking, never looking at them, never showing fear. The human glanced at her, wondering how she could stay so calm. But he saw it, the fire in her eyes, the way her small frame shook, not with fear, but with rage. She was holding something deep inside, something she refused to show. They reached a water stall, and the human stopped to buy a drink. The vendor, a large alien with scales covering his body, leaned forward with a grin. "Are you serious, traveler?" he asked, his voice loud enough for others to hear. "You trust that little thing to protect you? She is weaker than a hatchling." More laughter burst around them. The little warrior's hand moved to her sword, but the human placed his hand gently on hers. "Not here," he whispered. Her jaw tightened. Her eyes burned, but she listened. For a moment, silence hung between them, just a heartbeat of calm in the storm of mockery. The vendor smirked and leaned closer. "One strike from me, and she'd be broken," he mocked. "She doesn't even belong on a battlefield." He reached out as if to pat her head like a child, but in that instant, she moved. Her small hand shot up, grabbing his wrist with surprising speed. Her grip was iron, unshakable. The vendor froze, his grin fading. The little warrior looked up at him with eyes so cold, so sharp, that even the laughter around them faltered. "If you touch me," she whispered, her voice low but deadly clear, "you will lose that hand." The vendor pulled back quickly, muttering under his breath. The crowd that had been laughing suddenly grew quiet. They still smirked, but unease flickered across their faces. Perhaps this tiny warrior was not so harmless after all. The human placed a coin on the stall, collected the water, and walked on. The little warrior followed, her head held even higher now. But when they left the market square and entered a quiet street, the human finally spoke. "You didn't need to threaten him," he said gently. Her reply was calm, but firm. "If I don't show them teeth, they will never stop mocking." He studied her face, so young, so small, yet filled with a strength that did not match her body. She had scars across her arms, tiny marks of battles she must have fought long before meeting him. He realized then that her silence in the market had not been weakness. It had been control. The road stretched ahead, dusty and long. The laughter of the market still echoed faintly behind them, but the human could not forget her words. "I will protect you," she had told him when they first met. And now he understood this tiny warrior meant every single word. Even if the galaxy laughed at her as the two figures walked into the setting sun, shadows stretched long across the ground. The human felt a strange weight in his chest. It was not pity, nor doubt. It was respect, and perhaps fear, because deep inside he sensed that one day this tiny warrior might truly give everything, even her last breath, to keep her promise. Asterisk, the campfire flickered weakly against the cold night air. The human sat close to the flames, warming. His hands, his eyes scanning the dark forests around them. The road had been long, and the taunts of the market still echoed in his mind. But here, away from the crowd, silence pressed heavy, broken only by the crackling fire and the sound of distant creatures. The tiny warrior sat across from him, sharpening her blade. Each stroke of the stone against the metal was slow, steady, filled with patience. Her eyes glowed faintly in the firelight, but she said nothing. The human wanted to ask her about earlier, about why she had been so calm in the face of cruelty, yet so quick to strike when pushed too far. But he stayed quiet, respecting her silence. As the night deepened, the human lay back on his blanket, staring up at the stars. He closed his eyes, trying to sleep, but his ears caught something soft. A whisper at first. He thought it was the wind. But then he realized was her voice. Low and trembling. "I will not fail again," she whispered. "I will protect him, even if it costs me everything." The human's eyes opened, but he did not move. She was not talking to him. She was talking to herself. Her words carried weight, heavy like a secret locked deep inside. She continued, her voice shaking. "They can laugh, they can mock, but I will not let him die, not like before." The human turned his head slightly. Watching her in the dim firelight, her small hands gripped the blade tightly, her shoulders trembling. There was pain in her whisper. Not the pain of insult, but the pain of memory. Something had happened in her past, something that drove her now. He wanted to ask, but he stayed silent. Sometimes, the best way to understand someone was not by questions, but by listening. Her whisper grew even softer, almost a breath. "Mother, Father, forgive me. I could not save you, but I will save him." The human's heart tightened. So that was it. The tiny warrior carried guilt heavier than her small body should ever bear. He understood now why she had looked so fierce, why she had sworn. To protect him, it was not only loyalty, it was redemption. The fire dimmed, and the forest grew darker. Shadows stretched long, and strange sounds echoed between the trees. The human sat up, his hand resting on his weapon. Something was moving in the distance, something too heavy to be an animal. The tiny warrior's head snapped up, her eyes sharp. She had heard it too. "Stay close," she whispered firmly, rising to her feet. Her blade gleamed faintly as she stepped into the shadows, her small figure tense but fearless. The human followed, his pulse quickening. Branches cracked under unseen steps, the sound circling them. They were not alone. Figures emerged from the dark. Bandits with jagged armor and hungry eyes. Their laughter slithered through the trees, cruel and mocking. Well, well, what do we have here?" One sneered, a human traveler with his little pet soldier, another jeered. The mockery stung, but this time, human noticed something different. The tiny warrior did not flinch, did not shake. She stepped forward, her blade raised. "Leave now," she said coldly, her voice sharp as steel, "or your blood will water this soil." The bandits laughed harder. One lunged forward, swinging his crude weapon. But before the human could even move, the tiny warrior was already there. Her blade flashed, faster than his eyes could follow. The bandit collapsed with a cry, clutching his arm. The others snarled and attacked together. The forest exploded with sound, metal clashing, shouts, the crack of branches. The human fought too, but even as he swung his weapon, he couldn't help but watch her. She moved like lightning. Every strike precise, every step controlled. Her small body weaved through giants, her blade carving a path of survival. But it was not easy. He saw her stumble once, blood streaking her side where a blade had grazed her. She ignored it, her teeth clenched, her eyes blazing. She fought not for glory, not for herself. She fought for him. The last bandit fell, silence returning to the forest. The human panted, his chest burning, but she stood firm, her blade dripping with blood. For a moment, she looked like a warrior carved from stone, unbreakable, unyielding. But then he saw the tremor in her hands, the faint sway of her body. She was hurt worse than she let on. "Are you?" he began. But she cut him off with a small shake of her head. "I am fine," she whispered. Though her voice wavered, he wanted to argue, but the look in her eyes stopped him. It was not pride, but duty. She would never admit weakness as long as he still needed her. They returned to the campfire, the night colder than before. She sat down heavily, cleaning her blade. Her breathing shallow. The human wanted to speak, to thank her, to tell her she didn't need to fight alone. But once again, he heard her whisper. So soft it was almost lost to the night. "I will not fail again," she murmured, "even if it costs me my last breath." The fire crackled, shadows danced, and the human finally understood this tiny warrior was not only his protector. She was a soul haunted by the past, and she was ready to give everything, even if the galaxy kept laughing at her. Morning light touched the forest, painting the leaves gold. The human packed their small camp, his eyes always drifting to the tiny warrior. She moved as if nothing had happened the night before, her wounds hidden under armor, her steps firm. But he had seen her stumble, had seen the blood, and he knew she was forcing herself to stand tall. They continued along the dirt road, silence hanging between them. Bird-like creatures cried in the distance, their wings flashing like shards of glass. Every so often, the human glanced at her, wondering how someone so small could carry so much. Weight on her shoulders, she caught his look once and gave a sharp nod, as if telling him she was unbroken. By midday, the path led to a narrow bridge stretched across a deep ravine. A caravan of traders was stuck there, their carts blocked by a group of armored bandits. The bandits laughed loudly, swinging their weapons as they robbed the travelers. When they saw the human and the tiny warrior approach, their laughter grew cruel. "Look at this," one sneered, pointing with his blade. "A human with a doll for protection." Another laughed so hard he nearly dropped his weapon. "She can't even lift that sword. Watch if I blow, she fall." The traders, beaten and fearful, dared not speak, but their eyes followed the tiny warrior with pity. The human stepped forward, but she raised her hand, stopping him. Her small figure walked ahead, facing the bandits alone. "Move," she commanded, her voice cold. The bandits burst into more laughter, their voices echoing across the ravine. One of them, bigger than the rest, stepped forward, grinning wide. You'll make us move," he mocked. "Little one, you should run before you break your toy sword." The laughter grew, loud and ugly. The human clenched his fists, ready to step in. But something in her stance made him pause. Her feet were steady, her blade low but ready, her eyes sharp as fire. She was not waiting for help, she was waiting for the right moment. The bandit swung his weapon lazily, mocking her, and then she moved. It was not the clumsy swing they expected. It was a blur of motion, too fast, too sharp, too precise. Her blade struck like lightning, knocking his weapon aside and leaving a shallow cut across his chest. The bandit froze, shock flooding his face. Silence fell for a heartbeat. Then she attacked. She darted between them like a shadow, her blade flashing in the sunlight. Every strike was clean, every step sure. She moved with a speed the human had never seen. The bandits who mocked her now shouted in panic, stumbling as they tried to fight back. One raised his axe, but she slipped under it, slicing across his leg. Another swung wide, but she was already behind him, her blade cutting the straps of his armor. The caravan traders gasped, their fear turning to disbelief. The toy soldier was tearing through giants. The human joined the fight, striking when he could, but most of the battle was her. She was everywhere at once, small but unstoppable. Yet with every move, he saw the toll, her breath growing shorter, her strikes slowing just slightly. She was strong, but her strength was not endless. The last bandit fell to the ground, groaning in defeat. The caravan traders erupted in cheers, relief washing over their faces. Some even bowed to the tiny warrior, whispering in awe, but she did not smile. She stood still, her blade dripping, her chest heaving, and for a moment, her knees buckled. The human rushed to her side, catching her before she fell. She pulled away quickly, standing straight again, forcing her body to obey. "I am fine," she said. Though her voice was strained, he saw the fresh wound under her armor, red seeping through, but she refused to rest. The traders approached, their eyes wide with respect. "Thank you, little warrior," one said, voice trembling. "We misjudged you. You saved us." Her gaze flicked to them, cold and sharp. "I do not fight for your respect," she said softly. "I fight because I must." The human placed a hand on her shoulder, steadying her. He saw it again, that same fire in her eyes, the same vow she whispered by the fire. She would fight until there was nothing left of her, even if it killed her as they left the ravine. The traders' whispers followed them. No one laughed now. Instead, they spoke in hushed voices about the tiny warrior who fought like a storm. The human walked beside her, his mind heavy. He knew she was not invincible. No matter how fierce she seemed, her small body carried scars and wounds too deep to ignore. And yet she walked forward as if she could carry the galaxy itself. When night came again, they camped near the river. The human sat close, watching her silently as she cleaned her blade. He wanted to tell her to rest, to stop fighting alone, but she glanced at him, her face unreadable, and said only one thing. "Do not fear for me," she whispered. "My strength is not in my body. It is in my promise." The fire crackled, the river whispered, and the human felt a chill run through him. For the first time, he understood fully. The galaxy could mock her size, call her weak, call her small. But when the moment came, her strength was something no one could laugh at. And deep down, he feared what that strength would cost her. The road stretched into rolling hills, the air heavy with silence. The tiny warrior walked a few steps ahead, her blade at her side, her posture proud despite the wounds hidden beneath. Her armor, the human followed, his eyes never leaving her. He had seen her fight, had seen her bleed, and had seen her stand tall even when her body nearly gave way. But the question that haunted him now was simple: why? Why would someone so small, so fragile, throw herself into battles for him? A stranger. By afternoon, they reached a ruined shrine, its stones cracked and covered in vines. The human suggested resting there, and for once, she did not argue. She sat down on the broken steps, silent, her gaze fixed on the horizon. The wind carried a faint whistle through the old walls, and the place felt heavy with memories. Finally, he asked, his voice gentle, "Why do you fight for me? You don't even know me." For a long moment, she said nothing. Her fingers traced the edge of her blade, her small hands trembling. Then she spoke, her voice quiet but steady. "I know enough." He frowned, confused, but she continued, "My people. We were a warrior clan, small but proud. We fought not for conquest, but for honor." Her eyes darkened as she looked at the ground. "Years ago, we stood beside humans when no one else would. We fought to protect them, and in return, we were destroyed." The human's breath caught. Her voice grew heavier, each word filled with pain. "My mother, my father, my brothers. All of them died. I was the smallest, the weakest, the one they told to run. But I didn't run fast enough. Her hand clenched the blade, her knuckles white. When I woke, I was the only one left. Silence wrapped around them. The human felt his chest tighten, unable to find words, but she lifted her head, her eyes sharp again. So I swore an oath. I would protect humans, no matter what, no matter the cost. Even if the galaxy laughed at me, even if I died alone. Her words struck him harder than any blade. He realized then that she was not simply brave, not simply stubborn. She was carrying the ghosts of her people. Every step she took, every battle she fought, was for more than herself. It was for all those who had fallen. The human knelt in front of her, meeting her gaze. "You don't have to carry this alone," he said quietly, but she shook her head, her dark hair falling across her face. "Yes, I do. It is my oath, my promise." The shrine grew silent again, the weight of her past pressing on them both. The human wanted to argue, to tell her that no one should fight alone, but before he could, the wind shifted, carrying voices. From beyond the hills, a group of travelers appeared, aliens in fine clothes and polished armor. They stopped at the sight of the human and the tiny warrior. Whispers spreading quickly. "It's her," one muttered. "The little fighter who defeated the bandits," another added. Some looked at her with awe, others with fear. The mocking laughter of the past had been replaced with something else uneasy. Respect. The tiny warrior did not look at them. She turned away, unwilling to bask in their words. But the human noticed the way her hands trembled, the way her jaw tightened. She was not proud of their whispers. She did not crave their respect. To her, it meant nothing when the travelers left. The human finally understood. Her bond to him was not built on fame, not on glory. It was deeper, heavier, forged from loss and guilt. She did not see herself as his guard. She saw herself as his shield, his last defense against the cruelty of the world. That night, they made camp in a quiet valley. The stars bright above them. The human sat by the fire, but his thoughts were restless. When he looked at her, sitting with her sword across her knees, he realized something had changed. He was no longer just traveling with her. He was tied to her now, bound not by choice, but by her oath. And by the weight of her pain. "You don't have to fight only for me," he said softly. She looked at him, her eyes reflecting the firelight. "Then who will I fight for?" she asked. Her voice was not angry, but sorrowful, as if she truly believed she had no other purpose left in the universe. The human swallowed hard. "I don't want you to die for me," he whispered. For the first time, she smiled faintly, though it was a sad smile. "Then live well, human," she said, her voice soft as the wind. "Because, if I must die, let it be knowing my oath was not in vain." The fire crackled, the night grew colder. The human lay awake, staring at the stars. Her words echoed in his mind again and again. It was then he realized that this was no ordinary bond. It was not just loyalty, not just duty. It was something deeper, something unbreakable. The galaxy could laugh all it wanted, but he knew, when the time came, she would keep her oath, even if it meant giving her last breath. The valley was quiet the next morning, too quiet. The human and the tiny warrior walked side by side, their footsteps soft on the dirt path. The sun had not yet risen high, and a thin mist clung to the ground, curling between the trees like pale smoke. The air carried no birdsong, no rustling of small creatures, only silence, and silence, the human knew, was never safe. The tiny warrior stopped suddenly, her small hand lifting to halt him. Her eyes scanned the mist, her body tense. "They are here," she whispered. The human frowned, his hand resting on his weapon. "Who?" he asked. Her gaze did not waver. "The ones who killed my people," she said quietly. "The ones who hunt us now." Before the human could answer, the mist shifted. Figures emerge, tall, armored soldiers with blades that gleamed in the dim light. Their armor was black, their eyes cruel. Their steps heavy, and behind them the ground trembled as something even larger moved. A massive beast, its body covered in bone-like plates, its jaws lined with teeth as long as knives. The soldiers flanked it like hunters guiding a monster. The human's breath caught. The villager's warnings echoed in his mind, rumors of raiders who unleashed beasts to destroy entire towns. Ada! And now they stood before him, the laughter of the market long forgotten, replaced by the reality of death. The leader of the soldiers stepped forward, his voice cold and mocking. "So this is the human," he sneered. "And his little pet warrior, the one who dares to raise a blade." The soldiers laughed. Cruel and sharp, the beast growled, its roar shaking the earth beneath their feet. The tiny warrior stepped in front of the human, her sword drawn, her small frame a wall between him and the threat. The leader tilted his head, amused. "You think you can stand against us, little one?" "You could not even lift my blade." She did not answer, her eyes never leaving his. Instead, she raised her weapon slowly, with calm certainty. The human wanted to stop her, to tell her they should run, but he saw the fire in her eyes. This was no ordinary fight, this was her destiny. The moment she had been walking toward since her clan was destroyed. She turned her head slightly, her voice soft, meant only for him. "Do not fear. I promised you, I will protect you, even if it costs me my last breath." The soldiers moved, their blades flashing. The beast roared and charged, its massive body crushing the ground as it came closer. The human's heart pounded, fear rising like fire in his chest. But the tiny warrior ran forward, her voice ringing out like steel. "For my clan, for my oath, for him." The battle exploded, her blade clashed with theirs. Sparks flying in the mist, she moved like a storm, weaving through the towering soldiers. Her strikes fast and precise, but there were too many. And the beast loomed behind them, its eyes fixed on the human. The human swung his weapon, fighting back the soldiers who tried to circle him. But it was clear they wanted him dead, and they wanted her broken. Still, she stood, defiant, her small frame glowing with fury. Every strike she landed was filled with the strength of her ancestors. The weight of her oath, the beast roared again and lunged. The ground shook as its claws slammed down, missing the human by inches. The tiny warrior spun, her blade slashing across its armored leg. The beast shrieked, staggering, but its hide was thick, almost unbreakable. She did not hesitate, striking again and again, forcing it back. But the soldiers pressed harder, their laughter turning to anger as she cut them down. "Kill her." The leader roared, his voice sharp with rage. The human tried to push forward, but she raised her hand. "Stay back." She shouted, her voice carrying more power than her size should allow. "This is my fight." Her blade clashed against the leader's weapon, the sound echoing through the valley. He towered over her, his strength immense. But she did not falter. Every strike she made shook with fury. With promise, with pain, her body bled. Her arms shook, but her eyes never lost focus. The human watched, his chest aching. He had never seen such courage, never seen such loyalty. And as the battle raged, he realized something terrifying: she would not stop. Not until one of them fell, the beast lunged again, jaws snapping. This time, it aimed for him. Its teeth glinting with hunger, the human froze for a split second. But before death could reach him, the tiny warrior threw herself in front of him. Her blade struck deep into the beast's mouth. Blood sprang. The force of the impact threw her to the ground, her small body crashing hard. Nitrogen monoxide. The human cried, rushing to her, but she pushed herself up, blood running down her face, her eyes blazing. "I am not done," she whispered. Her voice was weak, but her spirit unbroken. The soldiers hesitated, fear flickering in their eyes. For the first time, the leader snarled, tightening his grip. "You will die here, little warrior," he spat. She raised her blade again, her stance unshaken. "Then I will die standing," she whispered. The human's heart pounded, his fear twisting into something else, rage. He realized then that this was no longer her battle alone. He could not let her sacrifice herself while he watched. And as the beast roared and the soldiers advanced, he gripped his weapon tighter. Stepping to her side, whatever came next, they would face it together, but deep in his heart, he knew the truth. She would keep her promise, even if it meant giving her last breath. The valley shook with the roar of the beast. The soldiers pressed in, their blades flashing. Their cruel laughter now replaced with shouts of fury. The human and the tiny warrior stood together, side by side, their shadows stretching against the mist. The odds were impossible, yet neither of them stepped back. The beast lunged again, its massive jaws snapping. The human rolled aside, barely avoiding the crushing bite. The tiny warrior met the charge head-on, her small frame darting forward with speed that defied her size. Her blade sliced across its armored hide, sparks flying as steel met bone. The beast shrieked in rage, its claws swiping down. The impact threw her against the rocks, but she forced herself up again, blood streaking her face. The human shouted her name, rushing to her side. But she raised her hand, stopping him, her eyes burning with determination. "Stay back," she whispered hoarsely. "This is my oath." The soldiers circled, their leader sneering. "She cannot stand against us. Look at her, broken already." But though her body trembled, she lifted her sword once more, her grip unyielding. "I will not fall until he is safe," she said, her voice carrying across the battlefield. They attacked as one, blades striking from every direction. The tiny warrior became a blur of motion, her sword meeting theirs with impossible precision. Each strike rattled her arms. Each block sent pain through her body, but she did not yield. She refused to take even one step back. The human fought beside her now, swinging his weapon at those who broke through her guard, but he could see it, her movements slowing, her breaths sharp and shallow. Every drop of blood that fell weakened her, yet still she fought. It was not strength alone that held her, it was her promise. The beast roared again, charging, its massive body crushing the earth as it stormed toward them. The human braced himself, but the tiny warrior was faster. She leaped forward, her blade raised high, and with a cry that shook the valley, she drove her sword deep into its eye. The beast howled, thrashing violently, its claws slamming into her small body. She flew back, crashing to the ground, her armor shattering. The human's heart stopped. He ran to her, his hands trembling as he tried to lift her up. Blood stained her lips, her breaths shallow. Yet when her eyes opened, they still burned with that same unyielding fire. "I am not done," she whispered. She pushed herself to her feet, staggering, her body broken but her spirit untamed. The soldiers hesitated now, fear flickering in their eyes. The leader roared, furious at their cowardice, "Kill her. End this mockery." He shouted, but none of them stepped forward quickly, for they had seen her stand after every blow, after every strike. She was no longer a laughingstock, she was a nightmare. The tiny warrior raised her sword one last time, her voice steady, though her body trembled. "For my clan, for my oath, for him," she declared, and then she charged. Her blade clashed with the leader's, the sound echoing like thunder. He was stronger, taller, faster in raw power. But her strikes carried something his never could sacrifice. Every swing of her sword was fueled by the lives of her family, by the laughter of those who mocked her, by the promise she had made to the human. Their blades locked, sparks flying. The leader grinned, pushing her down. "You are nothing," he spat, but she smiled faintly. Blood dripping from her lips. "Then nothing is enough to kill you," she whispered. And with one last burst of strength, she twisted, her blade slicing. Across his throat, the leader fell, choking, his eyes wide with disbelief. The soldiers froze. Their courage broken, the beast, half-blinded and bleeding, staggered back into the mist, its roar fading as it fled. Silence filled the valley, broken only by the sound of the human's ragged breathing. The tiny warrior stood swaying, her sword slipping from her grasp. The human rushed to catch her as she fell, cradling her in his arms. Her small frame felt lighter than ever, her breaths shallow, her body trembling with exhaustion. "You can rest now," he whispered desperately. "You've done enough, but—" She shook her head weakly, her eyes finding his. "No, not yet," she whispered. Her hand lifted slowly, brushing his face with trembling fingers. "Promise me. Live. Live for those who cannot." Tears blurred his vision. He nodded, gripping her hand tightly. "I promise," he said, his voice breaking. Her lips curved into a faint smile. "Good. Then my oath is complete," she whispered. Her eyes fluttered closed, her breathing faint. The human held her close, his heart shattering as silence pressed down again. The soldiers fled into the mist, broken and leaderless, but he did not care. His world had narrowed to the fragile figure in his arms. The tiny warrior had given everything, and though the valley was filled with silence, her last stand would echo across the galaxy, for she was small, she was mocked, she was laughed at. But in the end, she had proven herself greater than them all. The valley lay in ruins. The ground was torn where the beast had clawed. Blood and dust marked the path of battle. Broken weapons littered the earth, silent reminders of the fight. And in the middle of it all, the human knelt on the ground, holding the tiny warrior in his arms. Her armor was shattered, her small body trembling, her breaths shallow. Her sword lay beside her, cracked but not broken, just like her. The human's hands shook as he tried to stop the bleeding, his voice desperate. "Stay with me, please. Don't close your eyes." But her gaze was calm, steady, even as life. Slipped away from her. "You are safe," she whispered weakly. "That is all that matters." Tears burned his eyes, his heart heavy with grief. Safe. He wanted to shout that he wasn't safe, not without her, but his voice broke, and only a whisper came out. "You don't have to do this. You've already done enough." Her small hand lifted, trembling, and brushed against his cheek. Her fingers were cold, but her touch was gentle. "I told you, my oath is my life," she said softly. "They laughed at me, they mocked me, they said I was too small, too weak. But now, they will never laugh again." The human's chest tightened around them. The villagers and traders who had once mocked her arrived, their faces pale with shock. They saw the battlefield. They saw the fallen soldiers. They saw the beast retreating into the shadows, and most of all, they saw the tiny warrior, broken but victorious. The laughter that once followed her was gone, replaced with silence and shame. One villager stepped forward, his voice trembling. "She saved us," he whispered. Another dropped to his knees, bowing deeply. "She is no toy soldier. She is a true warrior." Others followed, bowing their heads, their voices low with regret. "She gave everything for the human. She gave everything for us." The human looked down at her, his tears falling. "Do you hear them? They see you now, they honor you," he whispered. But her faint smile told him she did not care for their respect. Her eyes were only on him. "Promise me," she said, her voice barely more than a breath. "Promise me you will live. Promise me you will not waste the life I bought for you." His throat ached, his words heavy. But he nodded firmly. I promise, he said. I will live, and I will tell them your story. No one will forget the tiny warrior who gave her last breath. Her smile widened just slightly, though her eyes were closing. Then, "It was worth it," she whispered. Her hand slipped from his cheek. Her small body growing still, the fire in her eyes dimmed, fading into silence. The human held her close, his tears falling freely. The valley seemed colder, emptier. Yet filled with the echo of her courage, she had been mocked, ridiculed, dismissed as weak. But in the end, she had proven stronger than all of them. The villagers began to gather wood, building a pyre in silence. No one laughed, no one mocked. They worked with bowed heads, their voices hushed with reverence, for they knew they were standing in the presence of a legend when the flames rose. The human stood beside her, his hand resting on the hilt of her cracked sword. The fire burned, bright, lighting the night sky. And as the flames consumed her small body, he whispered to the stars, "Sleep now, tiny warrior. Your promise is kept." The villagers and traders bowed low, their voices rising in a chant. "Warrior, warrior, warrior," they called, the same. Voices that once laughed now carried her name with respect. The fire burned, and with it, the last of her pain, when the flames finally faded. The human picked up her broken blade. He tied it across his back, carrying it as a symbol, not just of her, but of her oath, her courage, her sacrifice. He swore silently to himself that every step he took from this day forward would honor her. As dawn broke, painting the valley in gold, the human turned to leave behind him. The villagers stood in silence, watching him walk away. They knew the story would spread across worlds, the tale of a tiny warrior who defended a human with her last breath. A warrior who was mocked until the very end, but who gave everything. The human walked on, his heart heavy yet burning with purpose. Her voice echoed in his memory. "Promise me you will live." And he would. He would live, and he would carry her story, for though she was gone, her loyalty, her courage, her sacrifice would never die, and across the galaxy her name would be whispered, not as a joke, not as laughter, but as the legend of the tiny warrior who stood against giants, who defied the impossible, and who defended the human she swore to protect with her very last breath.